Okay, Bob, what made you passionate about fencing?
Well, I was at a boarding school in England in 1956, and it was raining outside. And I said, "Do you have any indoor sports?" Because they wanted me to pick a sport. And they said, "Yeah, we have fisticuffs and we have fencing." Well, I knew that I didn't want fisticuffs, so I asked him what fencing was because I had no clue. And he said, "Well, it's sword fighting." And I'm going, "Wow, I can fight with swords. I can really get back at some of these guys who've been beating me up." And they said, "No, no, it's taught at the girls' school."
Oh.
Woo!
Now, I didn't know about Freud back then, but it sounded pretty good to me. So that's what made me passionate about fencing.
Nice. Okay. Dwight, what made you passionate about fencing?
It was the only sport where I didn't have to be big, fast and running, and super powerful. So it's ideal. It's true for a lot of the countries that their kids aren't big. Well, so believe it or not, I started fencing in 1970 at college.
Ah.
And somewhere along the line, I took 25 years off to raise a family, everything else before I got back into it. But I always liked watching swashbuckler movies and things like that. And it seemed like an idea. It took me 4 years to develop a foreparry, believe it or not, that was that bad. But I'm not, my family is not a natural athletic family. So I'm the most athletic one of them all, believe it or not. They're modified couch potatoes.
And that's the best part about fencing, because I always say when a family comes over and say my kid is non-athletic, I was like, then he's a great fencer. So that definition, just the athletic definition, doesn't work with fencing. We make them athletic. We make them healthy and champions. So
the key
great.
point is you don't have to be big. You have to be quick.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to think on your own very quickly. It's not like running where you get into a rhythm. There is no such thing as a real rhythm in fencing if you're a good fencer, because there's a constant changing of back and forth between your opponent and you if it's a good match. And it could be at any age level or experience level. You fend someone that's equal to you or slightly better, you're going to have fun, because it'll be a true chess game between the two of you.
Beautiful.
So I don't mind losing a match if I fence well and then my opponent fences well.
Okay. So very good. Thank you, Leanne. What made you passionate about fencing?
Well, I personally have never fenced. I am a fencing mom.
Get on the trip.
Otherwise known as the bank.
Yeah, exactly. The bank, the driver, the everything. But I liked it because when we went to the club, I found that it was extremely multicultural. It was a very warm and welcoming group, and the students, the kids were all they were smart and they were kind and they were interesting. 1 minute I would, kind of dip into their conversations, and 1 minute they're talking about Pokemon, the next minute they're talking about string theory, the next minute they're talking about anime, then they might be talking about the stock market. You never knew what these kids were going to be talking about. So I loved that about them. I loved that they loved to challenge each other, and that they were so willing to help each other. And for me, that's what I loved about it. And then when we started traveling, and my son was always the time he could walk, he would find a stick, and he had to walk with a stick, and then he wouldn't drop it, wouldn't put it down until he found a bigger stick. Then that stick was gone, and then he'd grab another. So I kind of knew fencing. I should have known, right? But, he just, when we started to travel, we met people. We met, Bob very early on. Bob was an amazing mentor and help for us in a zillion ways, and has been from the very, very beginning. And Bob, I will always appreciate everything that you did, do, and have done for us. So thank you.
Wow. That is touching. Thank you, Leanne.
Charlene?
So, Charlene, what made you passionate about fencing?
So I got, so in 1982, when I started college, it was the only sport, varsity, that didn't care that you had never done anything sport-wise.
Mhm. Yep.
And the team actually worked on me for 3 years to get me to actually join the team, because if they didn't, they wouldn't have had enough women to fence a women's team. They would have had to forfeit all of their meets.
Wow, and that's a great
So that's what I
recruiting
got.
line.
Yeah. Yeah, they worked on me. I had roommates and sisters at the fraternity, little sisters, that were in the fencing, were on the fencing team. And they worked on me for 3 years to get me on the team. And their selling point was, all you have to do is buy a glove.
Oh, wow.
Dang.
Cool.
Big team.
So I fenced my rookie season as a senior and got to play spoiler to everybody.
Wow.
And then took time off for family and my master's degree, and came back in 1999.
Mhm.
And my oldest daughter had decided that she didn't want to dance anymore, so she took up fencing.
Mm.
Cool. Neat.
Yeah.
Wow.
One
And then my
expensive
sister
sport for
took it up.
another.
So
Here you are.
here I
Okay.
Did we
good.
lose Dr. Adele?
We might, well, he's here. Well, I'll tell you about my story. Oh, Adele is here. So I used to, my mom had a set of tables, you know, that they like go underneath each other, like small tables, like tea tables, and their legs would unscrew. So I would unscrew those legs and play sword fight with my little sister. And guess what? I'm 7, so she was probably 3. Where I think I opened her forehead like a little bit there, because you know it has like a metal end where it actually screws in the table. Well, a few days later, my dad brought over a foil and a glove, and that will take us to the second part, is who introduced you to fencing, where my dad brought me that foil and glove because apparently he was talking about both of us to his colleagues at college, and his colleague is Dr. Akram. He's belated friend of ours. He used to fence himself, him and his boys, and he brought him an old foil and an old glove and invited me over for the club, and I was 7.5 years old. And I still remember the first class that I took with him. So, wow. And then the family influence, where I actually, my sister got introduced to fencing, of course, as well, and she also joined the national team, but she continued in foil. I shifted after 4 years from foil to épée. So that's my little story.
Cool.
And I've been passionate about it ever since. So, Bob, who introduced you? What?
We forgot to hear from Dr. Adele.
Oh, Adele, you're right.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I'm here. So it's all started by chance. So my father and mother was looking for what our kid can play as a sport, and fortunately we have one of our neighbors who is a coach, Captain Mohammed Fouad. Currently he's a coach of the national team here in Saudi. At that time he advised them, so let him go to the Egyptian fencing club. He will find this sport, he will enjoy it. I started, and just after 3 months there was a competition. I won the bronze medal, the 3rd place. I was crying and everybody was congratulating me. So you did a great job. Just after 3 months, you are doing well. But I was really sad how I lost this competition. So this was one of the passions. So I trained much more with my coach, and I think since that time I didn't lose a competition in my age.
How
So
old
this
were
was the
you?
main passion. At that time, I was 9.5 almost, and it was a competition under 10 years old.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so while you're here, Adele, who introduced you to, you said by chance, who introduced you to fencing, and then the family influence, and what did you transfer to them or teach them?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the Captain Mohammed Fouad was the one who introduced me to the fencing and the Egyptian fencing club. And definitely my mother was the main player behind being still in fencing and all what I reach. She was the main person behind me, always encouraging. She spent almost most of her time pushing me to go to the training, go to the club, take me to the club when I was that much young. Encouraged me to join the talented athlete school. So she's the one behind all this.
And let me say, it's also a boarding school like Bob, correct?
Yeah, it is.
That is nice. So Bob.
Roger Cronier.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Like the introduction to fencing and as well as the family influence.
Roger Cronier was my first coach. He was the national coach for Britain. He taught this class on the side at the girls' school. And he noticed that I had some talent. I don't know where it came from, but maybe watching a lot of Zorro movies when I was real young. And I didn't have a sister to hit in the head, on the forehead. But I had a lot of girls, and I think the first tournament I went to, I couldn't get my feet to move. They were glued to the floor. So I lost 5-0 to everybody. And that was kind of crushing to a boy getting beat by all these girls, 5-0, 5-0. And they kept coming up to me and saying, "You're such a gentleman. Thank you so much." And I'm going, "Yeah, right."
Oh. And was there any family influence, or did you teach any of your family members fencing?
I taught my son to fence, and when he got to be about 13, he fell in love with baseball, and fencing went.
Okie dokie. Thank you, Bob. So Leanne. So again, who was the introductory person to fencing as well as the family influence?
Well, EJ was introduced by, let's see, the Power Rangers, Robin Hood with Errol Flynn, and then The Parent Trap, Lindsay Lohan, that fencing scene.
Ooh,
that apparently
yep.
is what that did it for him.
Yeah.
But we were introduced at EJ's school. There was a family. Bob, you may know the Santa Marias. You remember? They went to EJ's school and talked the school into letting Boyko Krastavich, EJ's first coach, his epee coach, to come in once a week after school activity. And so EJ's fencing and Kimberly Santa Maria kept saying, "He's really good." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks." And then she said, no, he's really good. And after about 5 weeks, she finally took me by the shoulders and said, I said, "Oh, you mean like he should take lessons?" And she goes, "Yes." So that was the end of the school year. We waited through the summer. In September, late September, he started lessons. At his first tournament in November, which I had, he was 11. He was almost 12. And I had him fencing Y12 and then like open mixed. Yeah. I know, right? Exactly. And I kept, and first tournament, I didn't know. So here he's fencing these big men and all he can hit are toes. So he got real good at toes. And finally, when both events were going on simultaneously, and I'm like, "Wait, he'll be right there. He'll be right there." The colonel who was running the tournament goes, "Wait a minute." He stopped the tournament. He disqualified him because he wasn't even 13. And he went on to win gold in Y12 after 6 weeks. So yeah, it was, oh no, that's not good. That's no good. Then he expected to win gold every.
Oh yes.
But he turned out he just loved it. And the family influence, the only real family influence that I can think of is my parents have taken a huge interest, and my parents are in their 80s. And every tournament, they've traveled with us in the past. They come to every tournament that they can. They're over there rooting for them. They're starting to understand. My dad, you couldn't pull him away the first time he saw Sabre. He thought that was like the coolest thing he had ever seen. So that's been our family emphasis, just bringing in my mom and dad, my son's grandparents, and
Wow. And I'm not going to even ask about dinner talks related to fencing if you have the whole family around the table.
oh yeah, right, and rehashing and rethinking and oh yeah, all of it. Yeah. But
Thank
wonderful.
you. Yeah, thank you, Leanne. Charlene.
So my first coach was Theron Lansford.
Mm.
I don't even know if he's still around at all. But yeah, he was my first coach for that senior year of college.
Oh, wow.
Well, obviously my daughter got into it when she decided that she didn't want to dance anymore. And so I started taking her. I was back to fencing by then, which is how she knew about it. So that's when she started fencing. And during her time period, and she fenced until she was a senior in high school, because her senior year she started working on preparing for college and what her career currently is. Found out well, she started fencing, and then my sister started fencing.
Oh.
And my sister is still fencing and fences vets. They're both lefties.
Oh.
So
Nice.
they found it was the perfect sport for them for being lefties, because it gave them this automatic slight advantage. And then I found out during all of the competitions and being out in Colorado for one that my uncle fenced when he was at Cleveland State University back in the 60s, early 60s. And like I had never known that, so that like opened up a whole nother conversation with that part of the family.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And it's great to continue doing a sport even if you're a veteran or not. So lovely. Thank you, Charlene. Dwight.
Okay. I started fencing in college, freshman year, because I thought I needed something to break the monotony of classes. And my first instructor was a Hungarian fencing master by the name of Ferenc Vajki, who had to be one of the Hungarian coaches who escaped after the 1956 Olympics. Was teaching at San Francisco State University, and his favorite phrase, and you gotta think of this in a really strong Hungarian accent: "Are you fencer?" That's what he would ask you every day. Are you fencer? And you have to sort of sit and understand, like, what did he say to me again? Are you fencer in the Hungarian? So learned for 3 years, and then transferred university to Berkeley, and I had to take 3 years off because I was just way too busy college and first job after college. I finally got back into it, and I worked with Bob may know him, Dr. Bill O'Brien. Did you ever meet him? I started learning under him, and then I finally got burnt out after the '84 Olympics when I was one of the host nation armors. So I took a break off, had a family, eventually came back to it. As for my family influence, absolutely none. They think I'm weird.
Isn't that a requirement for fencing?
I know. I was like, that sounded normal.
That's a good word. I think eccentric is a better phrase.
Which still fits perfectly.
But I think they saw a picture of me once in my fencing uniform. And you never bob back in the 70s when fencing uniforms are really stretched. And if you had any type of decent body shape, you look like Adonis. Fencing uniform, you're fencing whites. So that's it. As far as the kids, none of my kids went my route. they went their mother's route of running cross country because she was an All-American cross country runner at South Dakota State.
Hmm.
Almost made the Olympics except for an injury.